If there's one thing we've learned about business and life, it's that people are the X factor. They constantly surprise us, both in amazing ways and not so much. We're Ben and Syya, and welcome to the Gnaw on This Business Bites podcast. This show is all about real life things we all deal with every day, how they relate to business, and how to make some sense out of our daily chaos. Welcome to the show. And welcome back to another episode of Gnaw on This Business Bites. I'm Ben, and this is Syya. So here's a question for you. Looking at startups and the startup mentality, they drive me crazy. It's 90-day sprints. 90-day sprints within the startup mentality just don't make any sense. I understand why they do them. I get it. I understand that it's just like, okay, we're going to get from here to here, here to here, here to here. But what it's doing is it's creating a short-term mentality. All you're trying to do is survive the next 90 days. And if you're in a survival mode, if all you are is sitting there going, okay, if I can just survive the next 90 days, if I can just make payroll, if I can just, convince one more person to give me some VC money or some PE money, life is going to be fine. You're never going to build a business of consequence. You're going to build something that's a house of cards. You need to have long-term strategy. You need to have long-term goals. You need to be sitting there going and building a brand, because when you do that, there's something tangible for people to think about, to somebody to look at and see value of. That there's something that people can attach themselves to and understand why their goals are your goals and want to help you succeed. If all you're doing is trying to get through the next 90 days, you're always going to get through the next 90 days. So Syya, let's gnaw on this.
You should have mentioned to me this topic with trigger warning, trigger warning, trigger warning. It's no secret, kids. 20 years in tech sales, publicly traded companies. I know, and I understand a little too well the 90-day cycle, the hamster wheel.
Absolutely.
Of, what are you doing for me lately, right? Not even lately.
Not lately, the last 10 minutes. Exactly.
I mean, and I saw a noticeable difference in my last part of my tenure in my sales career, switching from one organization that was all about every 90 days, to another leadership group that was like, look, here's your annual quota, and we're going to work towards that goal. Yes, there's 90-day checkpoints, but it wasn't, you're going to get fired after 90 days if you can't. You're going to go on a performance plan after 90 days if you can't hit those metrics. Does that make sense? And I kind of felt that vibe of, it's all still high pressure. Do not get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But having a longer term view of your end goal with checkpoints it allows for creativity. It allows for pivot moments that you are allowed to test things out. Whereas that 90-day mentality is go with tried and true and do what you know and repeat, rinse and repeat. Totally two different tactics. And it could be argued, hey, if you know what works, don't keep cooking up new stuff. Just do what works. So I could see where it's both. I could also understand where, hey, we don't have a luxury of a year to prove performance. So it's going to have to be that balance. And I don't know if companies do that well.
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to I love the point you made, is that 90-day sprints don't enable for true innovation, because people will say that we're failing fast. We're failing fast. Our job is to fail fast and to move forward. Rinse, repeat, and learn. And I get that, and I understand that, but you're constantly tripping over landmines. And tripping over the same landmines because you're constantly going for that instant gratification. It's the FOMO. It's the siege mentality of looking at business saying, oh my God, I only have 90 days, or I might be out the door.
Mm-hmm.
I only have 90 days, or this company may be terminated. I only have 90 days. This, if you're constantly working a company that way, there's no room for error. There's no room for, for mistakes. There's no room for innovation. There's no room for trying to pivot a different way, because you can't afford it. Whether it's the internal pressure that you're putting upon yourself, or it's the pressure that VC firms are putting upon you, it's all about sitting there going, we need to have the metrics so we can be able to raise the next round, so we can go public, so we can sell this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not building anything to last. You're building something to sell. And when you're building something to sell, and you're not really caring about the product itself as much as you're caring about what does the stock market think of you, you're dancing with, not with your customers, but you're dancing with a fickle stock market that, if you miss projections, you may be extremely profitable, but if you miss projections, you can get killed. So I personally don't get, I can't, it would be, for me, it would be a heart attack waiting to happen on a weekly, monthly, and yearly basis.
It's why I broke out into hives. It's literally why
Yeah.
I just couldn't take that kind of pressure anymore, because to me, it was like, you can only affect so much in your wheelhouse, and that pressure of performance of things that are out of your control, to me, could be such a soul crushing proposition, a lose-lose proposition for employees, employers, to constantly push like that. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm going to be a devil's advocate here, Ben. I also believe there needs to be a sense of urgency to ensure that things are done in a timely manner. If anything that I've observed, particularly since the pandemic, there are some individuals that are just coasting through life for whatever reason, whatever it might be. So I see and I understand why there is that, hey, we do need some performance metrics to come into place. Like I said, there's a very fine line to put some gentle pressure for performance and accountability versus like beat someone down to death, to the point where, again, I'm speaking from a sales perspective. You're now making me message to my clients and prospects a transactional relationship, because I need something from you within 90 days. So
actually, you need something with them within 75 days. So what you can do is you can ship and bill it to be able to be on that quarter.
Okay, so let's flip it a little bit. So if I'm a prospect or I'm a client, and I know darn well that this particular company is all about the 90-day because they're publicly traded, isn't that almost in a way giving up a segment of negotiating strength, knowing that you're doing that to your own staff? And and me as a client, I'd be like, yeah, what you got? Give me your best quote and let me see if we want to play today. And that then
you want to buy a car. You want to buy a car, buy it on the last day of the month, or last day of the quarter, or last day of the year.
Yep.
Yeah, you want to buy a car. Those are the days to buy it. Is on the last day of the month, last day of the quarter, last day of the year. Because if you can do that, and you got a salesperson that needs to make quota, they'll sell it to you $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 less, or a sales manager will sell it to you $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 less, because they know that their bonus is predicated on making that sale.
I think it's a death spiral. I think it's a death
It
spiral.
is.
So you've got the organization that have pressure to compete, pressure to perform, pressure for results. You've got your team within the organization, whether it's engineering, marketing, sales, whatever, to perform. They themselves have to deliver to increase operational efficiency for maximum profits, right? Knowing that behavior driving, then it feeds into the customers that are in tune with their vendors to know what makes the vendors tick. Now they've got a power position to negotiate. It just feels like just a constant death spiral of, all right, well, hey, big company, you don't want to play my game, there's always another one right here that wants to play with me.
Absolutely. And a lot of that, procurement people know that. Procurement people absolutely know when they're dealing with a company and salespeople that are on a quota system. And they rely on it. And they negotiate based on it. And they'll slow play somebody to the end of the month or the end of the quarter, in terms of dangling that large purchase order on the system, knowing that they can get an extra point or point and a half because this person's under pressure to close a deal. And to the procurement person, it may not make a difference whether they do it on January 1st or March 28th. It could make absolutely no difference to them whatsoever when they close the deal. But they know that if they take their time and they slow play it, they're going to put their sales rep in a position where they need to be able to close that deal, and therefore they're going to be in a better power position. And companies who build profitability, who build bonuses, who build everything into that system, and their culture of live or die on those 90-day sprints, as you said, are putting themselves in a complete death spiral because everybody knows it. Everybody knows that cars are cheaper at the end of the month. Everybody knows that you could, if you slow play a deal, you're going to put the person under pressure to sell it to you at a cheaper price.
I think what it also does, it impacts the operations of a business knowing full well.
Absolutely.
Like, so again, I worked for a hardware manufacturer, right? So logistics now has to prepare for the end of quarter, rock and roll. You better have every component. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to ship in time to count for the accounting. Finance is suffering at the end of the month going, or end of the quarter going, freaking salespeople, right? Like, marketing is going to be having a lot of pressure to say, oh, did the campaigns over the quarter net any additional revenue beyond the forecast? So there's a lot of, like, again, it goes back to those quadrants, that 4 quadrants that we talk about, right? Which is low pressure, low, high pressure, high, what's that thing? The quadrant where it's like high stress, high.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it again, but I also understand this is business. Performance does have to. So I think I'd love to hear everyone and that's commenting, what is your experience? What is your suggestion? There's a lot of people that are consultants out there that consult for this as well to, maximize performance and, help businesses understand here's where you could be most effective or efficient or gain your revenue, blah, blah, blah. I really want to hear. Maybe I'm just still jaded by that whole, like, every 90 days, what you got, Syya, that I'm biased. I think I'm biased.
Oh, it's funny. I'm taking this on the reverse, is that I used to do an enormous amount of money with the government. And March 31st, if you're dealing with the government, is Christmas.
Yeah.
Because it only comes once a year. Everything has to happen by Christmas or it doesn't happen at all. And we used to know that the fourth quarter was when the government spent. From January 1st to March 31st, that's when the big sales happened.
Yeah.
Because they needed to clear their budget. If they didn't spend their budget, they lost their budget.
Yeah.
And I made hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on a yearly basis based on people just buying stuff because they needed to buy stuff to be able to, to justify their budget for the next year.
Yep.
Thankfully, the government got rid of that. Thankfully, the government allowed you to be able to take 20% or 30% of your budget and roll it into the next fiscal year because they realized there was first of all, it was putting an enormous amount of information, stress on logistics. It was putting on procurement, on invoicing, on everybody. It was putting an enormous amount of stress on the system, having people have everything in the system, but and invoiced and billed before March 31st. And therefore that they decide to fix the system and be able to push that money out. And it basically changed the mentality of how people bought, and people bought a lot smarter instead of just buying because they had to buy.
Yeah. I mean, unless you have a really, really, really stellar relationship for people who could just buy whenever they want to buy, the odds are high. Knowing their end of budget too. I get you. I get what you're saying. It's that stupid dance, right? Oh, well, you've got budget. I get it. I did not hear though that the government had the ability to roll over though. That's something new to me. So,
At least in Canada, they did. At least in Canada,
okay.
in certain departments and certain industries, healthcare was a big one where they did that, where they pushed everything out, and it enabled it to be a little bit more fiscally responsible, and be able to have the budget. The budget. They also said that you needed to be able to forecast. It's 6 months out what you were going to spend the last 6 months of the year.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Well, so what they did is they tried to be able to make it a lot more manageable and be able to make people make better decisions instead of people just buying stuff just to buy stuff.
Gotcha.
And I think that that's a far better way of doing it. But I think as organizations, and we need to land this plane, it's just to get back to the point, is that when we're constantly pushing, when we're constantly driving, when we're constantly, just trying to get to the next goal, we tend to make a lot of mistakes, and we tend to make a lot of bad decisions, and we tend to do things that are not in our best long-term interest. They may make sense in the short term. They may get you through the next 90 days. They may get you your bonus, but they could bankrupt a company.
Yeah, I could see that. 100% I could see that. Well, I don't want to add any more because I know we've run long, but I think I'm still in, traumatized mode.
Sorry, I'm sorry to have traumatized you.
I thought you were my friend. I thought you were my friend.
I am your friend. I'm absolutely your friend. Let's leave it there. I'm Ben.
I'm Syya. Traumatized Syya.
And I'm sorry, traumatized Syya, but we'll see you soon.
Hey. Thanks for listening to another episode of Not On This, Business Bites. If you liked what you heard, we most humbly ask that you like, share, and hit that subscribe button. If you want to communicate more effectively within your organization, contact Ben at IamBenBaker.com or me at BrilliantBeeMedia.com. We can help you build your community, brand awareness, and personality through digital content and podcasting. We cannot wait to hear from you. See you next week for another episode of Not On This, Business Bites.